Give it a little bit of time here, see if we get some others. Almost ready, I think. So I'll have one person on. Just give us a moment here. I'm waiting to see if we get some more join us here before I start in earnest. Uh,
Hello, Professor.
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
Yeah,
How are you?
good. So I guess the audio is okay and everything. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Is there in-person class today or
And we've got one local and you online at the moment. So yeah,
okay?
just waiting a little bit longer, see if we have some more join us one way or the other. But we'll get started in a minute. I'm actually still setting some stuff up here too.
Yes. Sure, Professor. No rush.
Cool, I guess that worked. Check some things here. How visible that is. Like this. Okay, yeah, it's five past. I'm gonna go ahead and get started here, even though we don't have too many yet. So I am recording this. So I'll post these. Let's jump to the course stuff first. So my plan for today was kind of typical first day stuff. We'll go over the syllabus, see if people have questions, things like that. I got a couple of things that tasks that I want people to be aware of. So let me. So if you haven't logged into D2L, make sure you do that. So I've mentioned in some announcements, I'm actually we've got kind of three different sections combined here. So the format might be a little bit strange because of that. We've got some people that are online, some people that aren't supposed to be online. Um, yeah, for now, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. We don't have a whole lot of students. So, what we do kind of in the face to face and how much we do of those will kind of depend on demand. I'm happy to be up here and talk about things, but we'll see what people want or need. If you haven't gotten to this course yet, you should go ahead and make certain that you log in, check out all the announcements and things. I'll go over those in a moment here and the course content and stuff like that. So I'm getting ahead of myself. So let me go ahead and just pull up the syllabus and start kind of normal things here. It's a little bit small for me to access stuff. Actually, I think I better download this here. Can I download this? Yep, yep. So that's a little bit better. So yeah, I'm Dirk Harder. Welcome to the class. This is one of my favorite ones to teach. My research area is kind of machine learning, applied to, I don't know, social sciences. This is kind of a strange, I've never done in this building before. I'm not certain why they, put the classroom over here. So I got a little bugs to work out. Display is not quite the way I would like it. So apologies for that. Some things won't be able to do that I usually would do here. So yeah, for our face-to-face sessions, we're scheduled over here in social sciences. Ferguson is just across from journalism building. I mean, even if you are registered as web-based, I mean, you're welcome to join. I know most people register for the web-based course because they have commuting restrictions or things like that and can't really come. As long as we're doing these sessions, I'll try and record them and post them or, make it available live. Although I don't really like using Zoom. I might try just using streaming a video, use maybe YouTube streams or something. I'll try that out next time. Um, so if you want to find me locally, I do have office hours. I do most all my face-to-face stuff on Tuesdays, Thursdays, kind of by design. Although I am available outside of that, just shoot me an email. We can always set up appointments for things. But I should usually be over in my lab is over in Science 355. A lot of people sometimes don't quite realize that. So I do have a journalism office, but I sit over in Science 355. It's a lot nicer. It's the high performance computing lab over there. And I should usually be in there, but as usual, I get pulled away from meetings and stuff. So, it's always a good idea to shoot me an email if you have a question. We can start on that if we need to. We can set up a meeting time or whatever. So, but I'm happy to, meet face to face or get email questions at any time. So feel free to use that. I did have an announcement. I usually kind of jump to this since I'm talking about email. Um, about etiquette. I get lots of emails. It's really easy for me to drop stuff. It's a good idea to have this in your title for your email subjects. This will be more likely to get into my correct folder on the email, so I know it's a student email. The reason why it's this format is, if you don't want to type that or remember that, just use the D2L email communication tool. So it always populates the title with that and put your title after that. So those should go directly on my rules, so they don't get lost in a bunch of stuff. So anyway, that's kind of what I meant by that. If you were reading these announcements, but that email is always a great way to get relatively quick response from me if you have a question or something. Um, Also, yeah, so we are going to be doing, we're using Java, we're using scikit-learn, which is a machine learning library, or kind of our two big main tools. So if you're not, nowadays, I mean, I find a lot of people are pretty familiar with Python before they come into the class, but that's fine if you're not. We don't necessarily assume that you've done Python, although we do assume you've done programming, so you know some programming language, and as a graduate student that you know maybe some higher level concepts, you know. So definitely data structures, algorithms, you know what we mean by object oriented or objects and classes in a programming language, that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, we will, you know, you will get a chance to practice Python, especially though you'll get a chance to use scikit-learn and NumPy a lot. So this is a machine learning course, so those are heavily used. Those are really the standards libraries that are used for machine learning. So yeah, I'm using this textbook. I mean, you know, I really recommend you just have this for reference, especially if you're doing anything, planning on anything afterwards, after your degree in that might be a machine learning or data analysis or any more of a scientific technical thing. So it's a very good textbook. We only really do the first half of this textbook in this class. Let me see if I think I should have this textbook on my machine here. So you should get the third edition. Although, you know, if you already have like a second edition, it's probably fine. Which one's my third edition here? Must be this one, I think. Yeah, so the third edition looks like that. What is that? Salamander or something? I can't remember. So I start talking about, you know, the table of contents. We mostly cover up through the first 9 chapters in the textbook. So the first 9 chapters are about classic machine learning techniques. So decision trees for vector machines, supervised, unsupervised learning, classification and regression. Those are a quick, but we do kind of go through all these. The second half, if you're interested, this is a good course to take before you take our neural networks and deep learning course, which I often teach. So we use some of this material in that course, although we use a different textbook in there as well. But you know, I do recommend this textbook in general. So most of the lecture notebooks and assignments and things come from or inspired from stuff that's in here. So, so textbook. I wanted to go back to the syllabus. Got too much stuff up already. Yeah, there's a couple of other resources. I probably should update this. I do recommend, you know, if you do need to brush up or, you know, this first week and a half, first week and this partial half week to start with, is kind of, we have an assignment and it's about kind of Python, although we jump right into like NumPy and a little bit scikit-learn in the first assignment. But this is a really good book, a free book, if you need to do a little bit of self-study on Python, like the basics, if you need to familiarize yourself with the basic syntax, for loops, how to define functions and things like that. So some of my lecture notebooks for the first week here on Python are kind of really based on the material from this one. So there's a couple of other things in here that might be of use, but I should probably get some more recent ones here. We don't have some other good recommended ones at the moment. So yeah, probably kind of already hit a lot of these. So we are looking at classic machine learning. So if you don't know what that means, this is sort of before this is, you can think of neural networks as kind of a subset of like a regression or classification algorithms. Okay, so you know we are going to look at basic linear and logistic regression to start with, and then we'll look at some more advanced machine learning techniques for vector machines, decision trees. These are all still very good to know. So. Yeah. So, for example, decision trees can still be beat or be as good as other state-of-the-art neural network, deep network kinds of things for depending on what your data is and what you're trying to do with it. Um, so we spend maybe 2/3 or 3/4 of the class on what's known as supervised learning. So that's by far kind of the biggest sorts of things that people do with the sort of classic machine learning is supervised learning. We do a little bit of unsupervised learning at the end for the last 3 or so weeks. So look at some clustering or other stuff like that. So both are good to know or good to have in your toolkit to do stuff. Yeah, I mean, technically our only prerequisite is the 515, which is supposed to be kind of programming and data structures. But I do expect people to be at least comfortable with programming in some language before you come in here. So at the moment, I keep thinking that I should maybe add a few more other things or different kinds of things, but we really only have um, two kinds of assessments. And by far, in fact, my percentages are incorrect there. I need to fix that. So usually it should be more like about 60%. Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah, 60%. Oh, yeah, no, that's right, right. So sorry, yeah. So 60% over what I think of as assignments. Although there's one more open-ended assignment that I'm going to have you guys do in this class. So basically, pick a data set and do some sort of analysis with it. So apply clustering or do some sort of regression or classification on it, that kind of a thing. So they're usually, and actually, there's probably going to be more like 7, maybe 8 programming assignments, uh, evenly divided. So about 7 or 8% each, and then that machine learning project, which will be approximately 1.5. A little bit more than a regular assignment. It's a little bit more open ended. So we'll talk more about that project. I'll have a deadline a little bit before we get halfway through the course of some of the stuff you have to do to get started on that at least. So. And so, yeah, besides these programming assignments and that final project, these are all, I think I'll talk about this today, and I'll try and open it up a little bit early for the two people I have here at the moment. If you have questions about getting set up. So you guys should have received an email. Actually, 2 emails at this point with some instructions about getting set up with your environment and stuff to do things for the assignments. So I want to talk more about that in a moment here. So we'll get to that. So yeah, and we have things that take the form of just some regular tests. Although these will be online, so I am juggling some online only students with some students that are supposed to be face to face here. But yeah, the test actually all the tests and the assignments all will be online. I don't necessarily have a attendance requirement, so we'll see how we're going to use this time here. Sometimes I have people that really want and like the face-to-face stuff. I'm happy to be here and do whatever people need, or not, right? So especially with this, we've got 6 students at the moment. So, yeah, question. Feel free to blurt out if you have a question here.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
So on the exams, so its midterm is 10% and the final is 20%.
No, there's 20% each right now. So 40% total for those 2 exams, 20% for the midterm, and 20% for the final.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I thought there was 2 midterms, but yeah, makes sense.
Um, yeah, there's I'm probably only gonna have 1 midterm. So yeah, you're right. That's not quite correct. I've sometimes done 2 of those, but yeah, I probably just have a midterm and a final, probably approximately equal for those assessments. And then the other slightly more majority of the points then from the assignments that we do in the class.
Sounds good.
Okay. Uh, Just kind of a heads up. I mean, there might be a requirement that I have to use the lockdown browser for the online test. So, not that I really want to, but just be aware of that. I might be forced to do that. So, although to tell you the truth, the way that I do the tests, well. Yeah, it would affect it a little bit, but the tests. I think I started saying this. They're more in the form, even though they are timed and online. I usually just give like a empty IPython notebook with some questions, and then you kind of do some stuff that would be similar to an assignment, but you just have to do it within a time limit. So you'll have a IPython notebook, and they'll say, okay, write me a regret. Here's the data set, load it, do a visualization of it, and do a regression analysis of it or something like that. So often the tests are kind of similar to assignments, just timed online, where I give you a notebook and you have to write Python code in it. Um, so yeah, if you can't tell, I mean, I do, I particularly think that if you really want to be proficient in this stuff, you should be writing code, reading code, looking at code. So I tend to prefer and do a lot of stuff with having you do coding assignments and actual analysis that we run and grade with our assignment workflows and stuff. So. Um, Okay, there's the usual kind of other things in there. I already touched a little bit on attendance. I think I did. I don't really have an attendance policy for the small class. Um, and I'll be flexible. We'll see what the face-to-face sessions look like here in terms of what people want to do, if they're useful for people. So there's approximately an assignment every 2 weeks. Um, and yeah, if you look at the schedule, kind of what happens is there'll be two or three what I call units or parts, two or three units that I've broken into parts here. Well, I guess at that. So, but yeah, two or three of these usually are associated with one assignment. Sometimes just one, but usually two different things. If you look at the course content. So yeah, this first week and a half is really, you need to maybe pick up Python if you're not familiar with that. Otherwise, you can jump right into NumPy and SciPy. Well, we really use NumPy, maybe Pandas a bit, and scikit-learn are the big libraries that you'll become familiar with if you haven't used those before. Yeah, and then we spend a bit on basic classification and regression. These Some people might not consider these kind of free machine learning. So you might take a statistics class or something where most of the class focuses on classification and regression. But we'll look at that. It's really good to understand the basics of that because a lot of the more advanced methods work in similar ways. There's just tweaks to the the fitness function that's used or other things on that. So especially things like support vector machines. Well, I guess that's not true. Support vector machines is the one big one that we use that's kind of related, similar to the sort of parameterized model. But then we'll look at some other things, especially decision trees and ensemble trees, like forests. Are still very powerful techniques. So, um, and then, yeah, I already mentioned, so then we'll have the last quarter or so, we'll talk about some unsupervised learning stuff, which is good to know about. So mostly principal component analysis for a type of dimensional reduction and a little bit of some clustering things like k-means clustering or something. Okay, doke. I don't know. Any kind of course technical kinds of questions that for the people I have here on assignments or anything before I kind of move on into some more specific stuff.
Professor, do we use Java?
Do we use did you say Java?
Yeah.
No,
No.
it'll be just completely Python in the course.
Okay. That's good.
Right. Okay. And in a moment here, I'm going to get up to that, I think. I'm going to kind of go over the getting started here. So I think I'm going to go ahead and just uh, do that. So sometimes, even for graduate students, it is a little bit of a hurdle to get things set up that you need here. So the assignments. Is this true? Okay. I do recommend setting up Docker and run the stuff in the containers like I'm going to show here. But actually, since we're using Python, it is possible to avoid using the containerized stuff that I'm going to talk about here or that's in these initial instructions on the getting started. So it's up to you. I mean, this is, learning how to use containers and stuff is kind of becoming pretty standard. And it's also another good thing to know. But you can probably just install, the standard python.org version of Python or use a conda or something. I don't know if I have instructions for that anymore around here. Although with the caveat being that, it will be up to you to make certain that you use the version of Python and the version of libraries that are assumed to be being used for the assignments. So if there's incompatibilities with version numbers or something, and it's because you're not using the containers, but you're using your own installed Python, that'll be up to you to figure out and fix it. So if you use the containers, when you pull down the repositories for the assignment, it will actually install the particular version of Python and the libraries that we expect to be used when we do our grading, auto grading, and stuff like that. Um, So there is a video. So I clicked on this link here. So if you haven't started on this yet, you do need to get a Python installed or use the Docker containers like we're talking about. So if you use the Docker containers, you don't have to install Python specifically on your system. It'll be set up when you create and go into a Docker container. But there's other stuff that you need. I do assume everybody has access to a computing system. If that's problematic, let me know as soon as you can. If you see this here, I do have alternatives that I can do. Although it is best if you just have a laptop or a desktop. The requirements for machine learning, as opposed to maybe like deep learning or neural networks, aren't too bad. So any relatively 2, 3, 4 year old computer is probably going to work, including Mac or Windows systems, including this all stuff should work in these setup instructions with the old Mac Intel hardware or the new Apple Silicon M1, M2, M3 stuff. That all it used to be people there would be problems, but those seems to have mostly been worked out. So people are not really having problems anymore setting this stuff up with new Apple Silicon, or of course using Windows or Linux works fine too. I usually use Linux, so this is actually a Linux system I'm going to be showing you stuff on here. So I won't show you as much details as I might show for an undergraduate course. I'll be happy if people are having problems getting set up, let me know or set up a meeting or something. So the first assignment is due next Thursday. Let me check that there. So if you look on the content, you probably can't see anything except for the first unit at this point. Yeah. So, but you should be able to see the first unit, and the first assignment is due on Thursday. So, sorry, on Sunday. So, I forgot about that. I decided to go ahead and make all the assignments due on Sunday by midnight. I often have people because I used to try and do them on Friday, and then people would say, "Oh, give me the rest of the weekend or stuff." So, if you work full-time job, you can maybe do the stuff. Although I wouldn't recommend, especially for the first or second assignment, wait until the last moment until you are familiar with doing the assignments. But you can either use it on the weekend, or if you're a more traditional student, do some stuff during the week. So I'll have stuff due on Sundays for this class. I'll try to get stuff back by Monday or at least by Tuesday before our normal class meetings. It's my goal anyway. We'll see how that works. So yeah, but there's an assignment due. You got a little under 2 weeks on this first one here. Um, so uh, so you will need to have Git set up. So if you don't have a GitHub account, it's free to have a GitHub account. You need to create one. You can use an existing account. I don't think it's a problem if your primary email for the GitHub account isn't your Leo mail, although it might be a good idea to at least add your Leo mail as like a secondary email if you're using it. Right. If you're using, yeah, so I'll just bring up, so I'm logged into GitHub as myself. Here's my own account. So usually, if you're not too familiar with GitHub, one of the first things you should do on GitHub, well, when you create a GitHub account, you will have to specify an email and you have to confirm on the email. So I'm talking about the primary email. But it's probably fine if it's not a Leo mail, although you might want to add a secondary one for Leo mail just in case. I'm using a new system. We were forced to use a new system because the old GitHub Classrooms went away. So I'm being a little bit vague on some of this because I'm not completely certain. And I have to see how this works yet. So we'll see. But yeah, that's the first thing. Get a GitHub account. That you should have had two emails, and you can now, of course, get into the course and find these instructions on there. The ones I'm looking at.
It's better if you put it with the Leo mail, right?
It is. I mean, you'll be less likely to have problems especially if you are creating GitHub a new account, just to go ahead and set it up with Leo Mail. You can always change the primary email address and secondary email address if you need to later on, if you keep using it for professional use. You're technically only supposed to have a single GitHub account, so yeah, that's why some people don't like playing around with what they set their email as. Um, you do need to have the Git tools installed locally. I'm not going to show installing those, although I will mention a few things. If I have Windows users, you probably won't have it pre-installed for you on Windows. Mac OS, you may or may not have it. For anybody, whatever operating system you have, I recommend just opening up a terminal. If you're not familiar with using command line terminals, usually if you open up like your start menu or something and just search for terminal or command. So I'm on Linux, so this would probably look a lot different if you're a Windows or a Mac person. On Mac, if anybody's watching this later, or if my person online is a Mac person, I think you have to go to like applications on Mac, and then under applications, there's usually like a utils or utility subfolder. That's where the terminal is on Mac. Or I think you can just search in Finder, similar to what I'm doing here on Mac, to open up a terminal. So that's going to be bad, isn't it? So whatever operating system you're on, I would recommend just first checking whether you have Git or not. Especially on Mac OS, if you don't have Git, most of the newer ones I'm familiar with will actually pop up and give you a way to install what are known as the Xcode tools, command line tools, which includes Git and Secure Shell that you need. An easy way on Mac OS usually to install the Git. If you're on Windows, you will need to download a standard installer. There's a link here for that and run it. There's one kind of thing about Windows. Again, this is Windows specific. Do check you can accept all the defaults when you're installing on Windows, except there's one parameter about the line endings where it will convert them to Windows style line endings, which is what is usually set when you install it on Windows. But you need to change that to do no conversion. So check out as is and commit as is, or else because if you're using the containers, when it checks out, if it converts them all to Windows line endings, but then you go into the container, which is a Unix or a Linux container, it will often cause problems, not having the right line endings. But actually, there was one thing. I moved on before I mentioned one more thing about your GitHub account. After you have your GitHub account, there should have been a second email. So this is part of the new thing I need to use. So you should have gotten an email inviting you to join the 574 organization. If you didn't get that, let me know. But if you did, I think there's like a time limit on that. So everybody that's watching this, I still had only 2 people out of the 5 or 6 in the course at the moment had accepted and joined that organization. So you need to do that, or else it might expire, and I'll have to figure out how to resend those. So I'm hoping to get everybody to get a GitHub account today and find that email that you should have gotten and join the 574 organization so that you'll be set up to do the assignment. So. And if you're seeing this or hearing this later and you didn't get that email, let me know as soon as you can, so I can figure out or send it again. Maybe somebody joined the course a bit later when after I did the roster and I didn't have you on there yet. So yeah, that's kind of important. But you do have to have Git and a GitHub account, and you do have to have Secure Shell also installed on your system. But usually installing Git, you'll get Secure Shell installed however you install it, or Mac OS or Windows. So the Windows installer, Secure Shell, a version of Secure Shell is part of the Git installation. So once you have Git installed, you should set these global configurations as are shown here. And again, if you do miss that, this is a Windows specific, but if you miss the carriage return line feed setting and you're on Windows, you can always fix that. So it's not really that big of a deal if you just know how to fix this. You can also configure that on Windows so it won't automatically convert carriage return line feed whenever you do a clone or a pull of code. So those look like this. I'll just do those real quickly on my own system. You can always look at your local configuration using the git config lists. If you want to set your name, of course, you can't have spaces. So, like a name with space. The name doesn't matter so much, although, this also, just to be safe, I would prefer that this matches the name that you have in your grade book, because this is what will be, whenever you make a commit and push it, that is the name that will show up on GitHub. And if that matches your name in my grade book, in the D2L grade book, it's less likely for me to get confused or not be able to figure out who you are. So try and make that match your name. If you're not familiar with, I usually, mention a few things about working on the command line. White space matters, spelling matters. You can't use like capital config. You sometimes will get error messages that may or may not be helpful. So everything matters on a command line. The amount of space between stuff, capitalization. Some command line flags have 2 dashes, some have 1. So like the global here that we're using needs 2 dashes. There's no equal. Sometimes you set things by using equals, sometimes you don't. The more important one is you do need to configure your email. And this really needs to be the same as whatever your primary email is on GitHub. So, if you're using your Leo email for your primary GitHub email address, do that. If you're using something else, that's fine. But whatever is the primary email address that you set up your GitHub account with, that is what you should configure, or else things might get messed up a little bit for the user email configuration. Right. And then, I already mentioned, if you're Windows, just be aware of those security return line feed settings. You can fix that or check that as well when you're doing this. And then the thing is here to finish up this section, you do need to successfully have a secure shell key. So that's how, when you make a commit and push it up for grading for this class, you have to have secure shell key set up correctly between you and GitHub. So the way to do that is you do this keygen command. I won't show that because I don't want to mess around and clobber the key I currently have. If you're not familiar with using secure shell keys, just accept the default. So I'm showing on a Windows system here. So for example, if you do a keygen, usually it should end up generating a key in your home directory. So this was my home directory users, a user called quick emu. Should create a directory called .ssh and it'll put the key there. Although I see you need to update this. You'll probably get a ED25519 key instead of an RSA key. So this is a little bit older. So I probably just haven't updated this output in a while. So, and also, unless, again, you're familiar with secure shell keys, I would recommend not setting a passphrase. So you can add some extra security when you need it, but it's not necessary for this class to have a passphrase on this key that you're using. So that's what's being shown here is we just hit return, so we don't have any passphrase. And it'll probably generate a key called ID_ED25519 instead of this. Okay, so to use that key, I'll show my key here. So in my, I don't want to show my .ssh directory here, but so on Windows, you could use the type command. On Linux or macOS, you could use the cat command to actually cat it out. There will actually be two files generated, two keys. I've actually only got an RSA key here. So as you can see here, so like I said, it's probably going to be ED25519 instead of an RSA. This is just an encryption standard here, and they've changed to using ED25519 as the default. So, but there should be two files. So secure shell keys are what are known as public-private key pair encryption. So what you need is actually the public key. So you could just navigate to your file system and open that up. So for me on Windows, or sorry, on Linux here, I could just navigate to my home directory, find that .ssh directory, open up the pub. That pub extension might be associated with something, it's not really a Microsoft publisher or something like that. So you probably can't double click on that. You'd have to like right click that and open it up with like an editor or something, a plain text editor. Right. But that's the thing. You need an ED25519 key is significantly smaller than that. It's usually just a single line, but you need to get that. You need to copy that, and then add that as a secure shell key into your GitHub account. So where's my GitHub account? So here, if you go back to your settings, besides your email settings, you can also get to and manage your secure shell keys that you can use with GitHub. So here, if I was going to actually add a new key, I'd go to here, I would add it, and I would paste my public key into here and give it a name. I think it's required to have at least something in the title. So once you have more than 2 or 3 keys, it's good to have a title to remember what each key, which machine it's from, or however you like to organize stuff. So once you do that and add that, it's important not to skip the step here. You should check. So the most common problem that people have getting started on these assignments is not successfully getting a secure shell key up there so that they can do get pulls and get pushes to their GitHub repository. So don't skip this step. Do this. What this does is this checks whether your key was correctly added to GitHub. So again, from the command line, If you do that, it should say that you're successfully authenticated. So you can't actually secure shell into GitHub like this, but you can check whether you've got a key correctly registered and can authenticate with it from the command line there. So if you get a message that failed to authenticate or unknown key or something like that, then you need to stop and get that fixed before you move on from this step here. And another reason why it's a good idea to do this first from the command line before you try and do it from VS Code or somewhere else is if you've never authenticated to GitHub with a secure shell key, the very first time you do this, this happens anytime you try to secure shell to a site. If you've never authenticated on that site before, you'll get a warning, and you have to say that yes. This is actually a valid site. So this is more security so that if you try and authenticate to GitHub again and somebody's trying to fool you with a fake site, it will know that, hey, this isn't the same one that you told me originally was the correct GitHub site, and it'll warn you of that. But yeah, you do have to say yes here usually if you've never done this before to GitHub. I mention this because if you try to do this for the first time by doing a git clone in like VS Code, a lot of people get confused because it's not there is a pop-up asking if you want to continue connecting or not, but you don't see it easily if you're using VS Code to do your git command. So it's a good idea for that reason as well to check your authentication from the command line. All right, so yeah, I should move on. Although one final thing before I move on from Secure Shell, another common issue. This is mostly a Windows specific thing, although sometimes it bites Mac OS people for some reason that I'm not 100% certain of. But if you are going to use the containers, the key that you generate on your host system has to get communicated into the container when it's running. That's done by a little thing called a secure shell agent. So if it's running correctly, when you generate the key using keygen, I think it normally automatically gets added to the running agent. But on Windows, when you first install, it doesn't start the secure shell agent for you. So as is mentioned here, if you run this and either the agent isn't running or it doesn't show any keys, you might need to do these steps, whether you're on a Windows or a Mac system, which is on Windows, you have to find Windows services. So just search for Windows services and then find the Open SSH authentication agent and start it from there and set the type so it automatically starts again whenever you reboot the system. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to move on from there, but that's just another thing to keep in mind if you're doing these setup for the first time. So if you are going to use the Docker containers, which I do recommend, you do need to have Docker Desktop installed. So the link here, I could probably make it a little bit more visible here, but this link actually should work to get you to the installer that you need. Is probably what you want to use, whether you're using Mac or Windows or Linux. You probably want to use this installer for Linux as well. So make certain you select the right architecture. So either you need Apple Silicon if you're a Mac user, or you have to know if you're using the older Intel architecture. Windows, I don't know if somebody have to tell me. I've run across a few students that are starting to use ARM-based architecture Windows PCs. So those are things now. So you do have to kind of know. You used to really not have to know that for Windows. It would be an Intel/AMD architecture, but yeah, you'd have to know whether you have like a new ARM chip CPU in your Windows PC or you're still using Intel chip. So yeah, since I'm running Linux, I can't really show, but make certain once you install it that you actually start and run the Docker desktop. So both on Mac OS And Windows, it might not start up automatically for you. So, and when you start this up, make certain that it shows the engine running. So if you're going to use the Docker containers and your desktop isn't running on Mac OS or Windows, or Docker is running, but it doesn't, it's still waiting for something. So it can be that it's running, but your Windows subsystem for Linux isn't set up or some other issue. So the engine isn't actually completely running yet. So that indication whether the Docker engine is running or not is in the lower bottom left corner of your Docker desktop. So just check that before you try and create a Docker container and run stuff. Okay, so if you get past that part, I'm going to show then doing this from VS Code here. So I'm going to actually get started on the assignment 1. All right. So when you have Docker and Git and your GitHub secure shell key set up, you can try and accept the assignment and start working on it. So this is kind of the first step of working on assignment 1 here. So I've already got VS Code installed. I won't talk about this. This installation worked pretty easily for most people on Windows, Mac, or Linux. You do need to have remote development containers installed. So I'll close this. So I've got VS Code running here. Yeah. So what's your question?
Yeah, Professor, I was curious if I could join the class using my personal GitHub. The reason is my local computer is connected to my personal GitHub account, and then there's another GitHub account with the student account. I could technically switch the device, but it all changes stuff.
Yeah, I think the short answer is I don't mind. I mean, you're technically not supposed to, by the user agreement, have multiple GitHub accounts. If you do, that's up to you. But yeah, as long whatever GitHub account you want to use, you can use the best one for you. So that's not really an issue. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Even if you don't have Leo Mail as your primary email address on it, go ahead and try it out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. So for VS Code, if you're not familiar with it, I mean, I recommend just in general, it's a good development environment, IDE, text editor. I've been using a lot lately. So VS Code is one of those. A lot of development environments are kind of the same model. It's an extendable. So it's really a framework for doing software development. So out of the box, it's not set up to do Java programming or Python programming. So in order to get it set up, you have to install what are called extensions. So if you're using the containers, it will install the extensions you need inside of the container. But to use the containers, you do need one container. So the dev container. So if you don't have it installed, just search for dev containers, or maybe container. And just install that. Make certain it's the official Microsoft Dev Containers container. If you want to do remote development like over SSH or something, you can use this. This supports doing other stuff besides just Docker containers remotely. So you can connect to like Windows subsystem for Linux, virtualization running. You can connect to a machine running on a cloud over SSH using that. But I think if you're just using local Docker containers, you only need the dev container installed. If you have that, then here's the steps for accepting the assignment and running in the container using the Docker to run your container, or sorry, using VS Code to run your containers in a Docker container. So if you look at the assignment, there should always be an invitation link. And this won't work. So you should be logged into GitHub and you should have already accepted and be a member of the 574 organization. So if you click on this, I might have already done this. So let me see what happens when I click on this. So I'll go ahead and accept. I'm going to accept this as my teaching account here. So you should see something similar. Again, assuming that you have accepted and are a member of the 574 ML organization here. That to the top there. So I'll just accept the assignment.
Classroom 50.
Yeah, Classroom 50. So there used to be an old thing that GitHub provided for people called GitHub Classrooms, they stopped doing that. They don't support that anymore. Classroom 50 is a initiative, I think, led by MIT for their intro to programming courses, but basically this is a replacement. But yeah, there's from your student's point of view, this Classroom 50 is probably actually nicer than what it used to be. So if you're logged in to your GitHub, I think the first time you do this, you have to get permissions and stuff. The first time you try and look at Classroom 50, once you do that, if you go to the top, you should find that you're a member of the 574 organization. And if you open that up there, you'll be able to see all the assignments. I've only got the first 3 or 4 converted over to Classroom 50. And you should be able to go in there. I'm going to be, I probably shouldn't do that. I'm going to be able to see, since I'm running as the teacher here, I can see everybody's. You'll only be able to see your submissions and stuff in here. So anyway, yeah, I accepted the assignment. So however you do that, I should be able to like look at my. So what that means when you accept an assignment, it actually creates a repository on GitHub for you, and it's a requirement to do the assignments that you're able to do this. That you've got a GitHub account set up, and you're a member of the organization, and you can successfully accept these assignments, so it creates a repository for you to work on the assignments. Okay, this is where you're going to be doing all the 7 or 8 assignments are in these things. So these are private. They're actually owned by the 574 organization, but you're given read-write access to it, so you can create commits and push commits here, so I can see your work and grade it. Haven't talked all summer, so I'm losing my voice already. So yeah, if you can successfully do that, what you do to start an assignment is you want to do a clone, a git clone. If you're not familiar with doing git stuff, you need to clone it using the SSH URL, not the HTTP URL. And again, this will only work if you have your SSH key set up. So you just copy that URL. You can clone it if you're not using VS Code, dev containers, you can do a git clone command. Another nice thing for VS Code is that's one of the kind of considered a fundamental thing is working with source control, so it knows how to do Git stuff, as well as other revision control systems out as part of the standard framework that VS Code has. So this is what I normally do when I'm working with VS Code. I do a clone repository here. And just paste that SSH URL, that github.com URL. And you want to clone from the URL if you're doing it the way I'm showing here. So clone from GitHub is something different. So we'll just say clone. I always put all, just as a hint, I always put all my repositories in a subdirectory, but you can organize them the way you want. So I've got a repo subdirectory on my system, but I usually put all my repositories that I'm working on there. So the way that VS Code works is this actually created a subdirectory, and it does projects based on the directory and all the subdirectories under that directory. So if I open up my file browser, if I look at my repos, I've now got a what was that? Assignment 1. CSC. So yeah, your name will be similar for these assignments for this Classroom 50. So it should be something like CSci574, fall 2026, assignment 1, and then your GitHub username, I believe, is the last thing there. But yeah, wherever you clone it on your directory, on your file system, be there, and there'll be a lot of stuff under there. So that is the root of a project if you're using VS Code. So we've got subdirectories like where the notebooks are, where the source code is, and other stuff in here. All right. So usually you want to open up the repository when you clone it, and then you want to reopen it in a container here. For any way to minimize this thing, I'm going to figure that out. So this pop-up won't work. So if you want to use the Docker containerization that I've been talking about, this is how you do it. So once you've cloned your folder, you need to reopen it in a Docker container. If you don't see this pop-up, your Docker desktop might not be running. You might not have Docker installed. You might have some other configuration issue, so you have to figure that out. If you don't see that pop-up, you can always try, or if you miss clicking that I want to reopen the container. When you install the dev containers extension, it should add an additional thing on your basic left-hand side here called Remote Explorer. This is if you do dev containers, you should only have, you can do other kinds of stuff, but if you only install dev containers, there should only be your list of managing your Docker dev containers here. Another way you can create the container is you can go to here, the Remote Explorer, and say, hit the plus and say, for example, open the current folder and container. Or there's other ways to create a container from like a folder. So I'll just open my current folder inside the container. The very first time you do this, the very first time you create a container, however you're creating a Docker container, it can take some time. Trying to think here. So for me, it shouldn't take too long. It'll depend on whether it's downloaded these pieces to construct a container with or not. So whether it's got them locally in your cache or not. So this might take longer than I want it to here for this to complete. I do recommend, especially the first time you ever do this stuff, if you have access to a relatively fast internet connection, you might want to do the stuff from there, just so at least it doesn't take forever to download pieces to build these dev containers. So I'm almost done. It might take a lot longer than that, depending on what you have. So you should see something like this. I still got about 10 minutes here. So this is the first assignment that you should be working on. So a couple of features of stuff that it does. So this should be set up, I hope. So it's got a Python version. The Python version that we're expecting for the assignments is installed in here. So like if you open up a terminal from here, so this is actually, this isn't running on my host system. This is running in my Docker container. All right. So you might want to check this. So if I run Python 3 from here, it should be getting the version from the opt-based bin Python. And this should be a version 3.13. Now, I think 3.14 is available now, but we're using, I think we're pegged to like 3.13 for the assignments currently. The other thing you might want to check is this actually runs Jupyter Lab. So most of the stuff that I'll do in class, I'll actually be running like Jupyter Lab notebooks. So this is actually running Jupyter. It's got everything installed to run Jupyter Lab. It's running inside the container on the port 888, but we've actually forwarded this to your local host here. So you should be able to, like I usually often just control click on this. So there, and we've got it set up so it shouldn't ask for like a password or a key or anything from these containers. My system might be lagging. Zoom might be lagging here. Hopefully you guys can still see me. Oh, I think I lost my online guy for some reason. So anyway, this is one way when I'm running notebooks, I prefer using Jupyter Lab. So the assignment one notebook, even though we're running a container, you should be able to bring up Jupyter Hub and run your notebooks from here.
Okay, using through Anaconda, right?
We are not using Anaconda in these Docker containers. So
Your Jupyter Lab.
we install a basic version of Conda in opt base, but we're not using the Conda package manager inside of here. But also it does install the Jupyter Lab and the Jupyter tools. So those are all in the opt base installation of the Python here, right? But yeah, we're not actually using the content package manager. I have used content package manager for these assignments in the past, but we cleaned it up a little bit. So for the interested student, you can look. All the dev container setup is in the .dev container. In particular, there's a set up Python environments. This is the actual stuff that we're doing to set up Python. So yeah, we're using basic Python virtual environment to set up a virtual environment in opt base. And then from there, there's a requirements.txt. So for the, again, if you're not using these Docker containers, for some of the assignments, there's specific sets of required packages. So for most of our assignments, we need NumPy, scikit-learn, if you want to run Jupyter, but yeah, it'll be up to you. There might be some additional ones sometimes for some of these assignments, but that will be the ones for the auto grader. Those will be the things that are installed and are expected to be available to run the assignments here is that requirements.txt. So. This should be, you can also, I don't actually like running notebooks inside of VS Code, but that actually should work. So like if you double click on a notebook, it'll run a version of a Jupyter notebook. This should be fully workable. And although I think my configuration might not automatically select a kernel, it's supposed to, but if you don't have a kernel selected, I think if you just click on that, what you want is, you want to select the user local, no, sorry, you want to select the opt based bin. So yeah, if you do have, if you want to run these inside of VS Code, make certain you're using the opt base virtual environment kernel that should show up here if you need to select the kernel by hand. So once you've selected that, you should be able to run the notebook from here. Or you can use Jupyter Hub in your browser on your host system. Either way. So why did that get killed? I don't know why I lost my Jupyter. I'll have to check that. Maybe shouldn't have. Should have still been running. Okay, yeah, we're coming close to the end, so I might wrap up there. This is kind of a good natural stopping point. So, I mean, try and get this far before next Tuesday. I'm probably going to pick it up from here. I'll talk more about what you need to do for the assignments. So once you have this for this first assignment, mostly you're just doing stuff. You do have to add, but you have to implement stuff in the source assignment task.py, right? So you'll be implementing what you're asked for here to write these functions, a basic sigmoid function, a sigmoid function, and so on. But then those are actually run and tested from the notebook and other things. But I'll share some more details of that next Tuesday to get people started on the assignment. So, but yeah, if you can get this far before next Tuesday, you should be in good shape to be able to get stuff finished up by that Sunday for the first assignment deadline. All right, yeah, I lost my online, but I will post this, so you might be watching this after that. You have any last questions? Things? We good? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, yeah, I'm gonna stop the recording here and post this. So.
You give all of them information in that everything, so we can just watch and do that.
Yeah, there are videos for this doing the assignments and stuff too. So and the setup. So if you're not let me go ahead and stop the recording here.
So Professor, since we have like given our students, it's gonna be face to face, like.
Well, yeah, that's up to you. I mean, I am happy.